Hi, this is Coach Herm Edwards. It's been a pleasure for me to be on the Pure Athlete Show.
What is your take on the positives and negatives of the transfer portal in college football?
It's an era where we're not used to it. It's free agency, but it's worse than free agency.
Today's parents are super involved. What was that dynamic like with your parents growing up?
My father never saw me play football in high school. My mom didn't want me to play football.
That coach in high school, why was he such a good coach, and what did he do for you?
I tell people all the time, I said, I learned football from this man.
Who do you consider the best player you ever played against?
And I don't want to slight anybody, but in the era that he came in.
What are the differentiators that make great coaches?
When you become a coach, you're a servant. You serve them, they don't serve you. And then I think the next thing coaches have to do is.
Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I am Jeff, along with Britt and Brad. Fellas, our favorite time of year, even though I'm a baseball guy, my favorite time of year is here. NFL and college football
Finally.
is in full swing now.
Yep.
Starting to see what's going on, starting to see what teams. So I figured, what better way than to kick off football than to bring one of the greats in here, a great coach, both in the college and the pro level, and now is on ESPN with NFL Live.
Played a little bit too.
Yes, he did play. Sorry, let me go back to that. He
away
played
from
for
him.
10 years. I want to give him that. But Coach Herm Edwards, thanks for coming on with us.
Well, thank you. And I know you guys are in Atlanta. I actually ended my career in Atlanta.
That's
in
right.
Philadelphia for about 10 and then went to Atlanta. And then from there, I decided to retire. And then I got into the crazy coaching profession and kind of worked my way up the ladder, So it's been an interesting journey for me.
Yeah, so Coach, you went from a player to coach to media guy, back to a coach, and now you're back at ESPN. Tell us a little bit about your new gig, or I guess it's not a new gig, been there a couple of years, but tell us kind of what you're up to these days.
Well, when I left to go back to college, everybody said he's crazy, and I said, yeah, well, that's when you play corner in the National Football League for 10 years, you're crazy. There's no doubt about that. But I just felt like the circumstances where I was going. The AD actually was my former agent, Ray Anderson. Actually, he lives in Atlanta, and one of those deals where we got to talking, and the next thing I do, I asked my wife. I said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" She said, "Are you crazy?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm crazy." And I said, "Why not?" I felt like I could help young men with their journey. And my big deal was when I was a college coach, I told every parent, I said, look, I can't give your child talent. I can give him information. I'll make him the best player he can be. But I can promise you this, he's going to graduate. They're going to graduate. Your son will graduate from this university. He'll have a degree. And if he's good enough to play pro football, he'll be trained. He'll know he'll know what to expect. He'll be trained that way. And then from there, he's got to go do it, So I enjoyed it. I really did, getting back, with the young guys and just kind of having a lot of fun with those guys, because you could see in their eyes kind of what I felt when I was their age. That never changes. Everybody, and you're a pro baseball player. Athletes don't know how hard it is. There's a lot that goes into it, and there's more than just the team that you see, that you grow up watching. There's athletes all over the country that are trying to do what you want to do. Be a professional baseball player, be a professional football player, a golfer, whatever it may be. It's hard. I tell you a quick story now. So I was a dual athlete. I grew up, I'm be quite honest, I'm 70 years old. I was born in 1954, and growing up, the movie that really got me to want to be an athlete was Jim Thorpe. With Burt Lancaster. I watched the movie Jim Thorpe, and I watched this guy like, man, who is this guy, right? And, did everything. He played all sports. He was a tremendous athlete. And I said, I'm going to be like that guy. I'm going to play everything. And my first love was kind of baseball. Because, I grew up in an era where baseball was really ahead of football. Baseball was America's pastime for the most part. It wasn't football. so much. Now that has changed, as we know. But, so you're playing baseball, you play Little League, and, I'm pretty good, and you play Colt League, and I'm pretty good, and you get in high school. And so I was a pretty good player, 10th grade, then the 10th graders could play varsity. And I've played varsity in football, basketball, baseball, everything. So I get on the baseball team, and we're playing this away game, and I'm standing up at the plate, and the guy throws me this curveball. And I backed up off and like, whoa, that's interesting. So after about 3 appearances in the plate, and I struck out 3 times, I told the baseball coach, I said, I'm going to go run track. The curveball ran me out, man. I couldn't hit the curveball. I said, I'm done with this baseball, man.
Hey, Coach, if you watch today's game, though, man, that 3 strikeouts a game is pretty normal now. So you could have fit in.
No, I know. Well, because everybody wants to hit a home run.
Exactly, man.
You hit the home run and you're a hero, man.
God, you ain't lying. So tell us a little bit about that. Growing up I know you're born in Jersey, but growing up in California, your dad was in the Army. What did your youth look like in the Edwards household?
Well, I grew up in like I say, in the 60s, and I grew up in a little small community called Seaside. It's close to Monterey. It's on the peninsula. And, I was supposed to go to Seaside High School. But when President Johnson signed the desegregation bill, I got bused to a predominantly white high school. And so I had to catch a bus every morning, like at 6:30, and go across the town to the Monterey High, which was a blessing at the end because I probably had one of the best coaches, high school coaches you could have as a football guy. He's still living. His name is Dan Albert. I tell people all the time, I said, I learned football from this man. And we had a pretty good football team. In 3 years, we only lost 1 game. We had like 5 guys that ended up being in a
pretty good.
Yeah, we had 5 guys, NFL guys
that's
on that
pretty
one
good.
team, man. We're pretty good.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot, and that was one of those deals where obviously in the 60s, there was a lot of unrest in our country. And, you go to a predominantly white high school and you get bused there. And it was fine because my mom was a German war bride. So it was kind of like, hey, man, but I grew up in the neighborhood. And so you get out of the neighborhood, you go over to Monterey High, and you kind of dance your way around that. And then from there, I played basketball. As I said, I played baseball. And then once the curveball, I said, I got to get out of baseball. I can't do this. I ran some track and played football. But football was my calling. I played on both sides of the ball. And eventually I kind of became a defensive back. So I had a lot of opportunities to go to a lot of different universities. Cal Berkeley was one. It was kind of interesting. They started recruiting me when I was a sophomore. And I kind of like, now this, you got to imagine now, 1970, you walk on the Cal Berkeley campus getting recruited and you're like, where is this place? This place is
That's a different atmosphere right there.
You walk down Telegraph Avenue, I'm going, oh, okay. And I was kind of one of them curious guys, right? And so I'm sitting there and I got to decide where I want to go. And my parents are sitting there with me and my dad looks at me. He's a math sergeant now. Korean War, World War II, just America is, you do things right. There's order. There's order. There's always order, right? And so I tell him, he said, where you going to go? And I said, I'm going to Cal. He looked at me, he says, you going where? And I said, Cal Berkeley. he said, son, he said, they got them hippies up there with their long hair and they smoke them funny cigarettes. What are you doing? They burnt the American flag. And I said, Dad, I need to go to Cal.
Wow.
Because it fit me. It fit kind of who I was. I was curious. I was curious. I was a young guy that was curious about life. And that place was like, wow, it opened your eyes, right? I'm one of them guys growing up, when I was 14, 13 years old. I tell people this story. I had the best babysitter in America. Jimi Hendrix was playing here at the Monterey Pop. And she messed around and took me to this thing, to the concert. And I'm sitting up there and I'm saying, who is this guy? And he's left-handed guitar. And I'm going, who is this guy? And she said, that's Jimi Hendrix. I said, who? And I tell you what, when he put the lighter fluid on the guitar and burned it, I was a Jimi Hendrix fan. And I tell people all the time, I seen Jimmy live when I was 13 years old.
13.
Wow.
Good Lord.
And so, I kind of grew up in that era, and I grew up in an era where, and I know we're going to get to this, you couldn't ask why. You could never ask a coach why. Because it was, in those days, it was threatening authority. It was questioning authority. And I was one of them why guys, right? I always ask why. Well, lo and behold, at the end of the day, by me asking why with this coach at Cal, I ended up leaving, right? After my freshman year started, and then I got into it with the coach, and left and went to JC for a semester, and they convinced me to come back, and they moved to position coach, and he goes to linebacker, and I get another coach, and we're good in my junior year. We got a good team, guys. I mean, I tell you, one of the guys in Atlanta, Steve Barkowski was one of them.
Barkowski, yeah.
And Vince Ferragamo was the other one. And everybody knows who the running back who I'm about to mention, Chuck Muncie. I mean, we had some guys now. We had the who's who of football teams now. We had the NLI before the NLI was even invented. But now we won't get into that. But so you're sitting there, and in my junior year, the coach that was coaching me, went to the 49ers, and the other coach comes back. After first practice in spring ball, man, it was like, this ain't gonna work. So I leave. I ended up leaving. And I had to sit out a year. I went to San Diego State. That was the renegade school back in the day. All the double transfers and all the JC guys. They didn't recruit any high school kids. I mean, Coryell came out of there. That's who was coaching them in the beginning, right? And then he ended up going to St. Louis. And so that was a school where basically all the renegades went. The double transfers, the JC guys, the guys that, whatever. So I ended up going down there and had to sit out a year. And then from there, basically got blackballed. I didn't get drafted. And Dick Vermeil was in Philly. He was at UCLA. He recruited me to come to Cal, and I didn't go. I ended up going to UCLA. I ended up going to Cal. And then he was at Philly. And so I went to Miami first for a tryout, a 2-day tryout. Coach Shula was down there. And then the next weekend I went to Philly. And, I ended up signing with the Eagles, and there started my career. I started as a rookie and never missed a game, never missed a practice. I had a pretty good career there. So that's kind of my story through athletic. Met a lot of, been around a lot of great coaches, a lot of great players. And I've always said this in sports, like in life, it's about knowledge, right? It's how do we transfer knowledge, the things we know, to the people that we serve. And I always say, when you become a coach, you're a servant. You serve them, they don't serve you. That's kind of how it works. And you give them information. And then I think the next thing coaches have to do is you don't give players talent, but you put them in position to be successful. I mean, that's your job at the end of the day. You want them to be successful, right? And, it's just, I was very fortunate. When I retired, Claude Gilbert, who was at San Diego State, was at San Jose State. So I come home and I was going to coach at the JC, and I get a call. I'm actually going to go, I'm going to be the secondary coach at the JC. And I get this call from Claude Gilbert. He's at San Jose State. He said, why don't you come up and talk to me? So I drove up to San Jose. It's about, hour, 15 minutes. And he said, you want to be the secondary coach? And I looked at him. I said, like, secondary coach? He goes, yeah. Like when? He said, like right now. And I go, really? He goes, yeah. So I started coaching. I started coaching. I was there for about 3 years. Then went to Kansas City. And on that staff was Marty, Bill Cowher, Tony Dungy. And me and Tony go way back. We played in all-star games together. That's how we met. We became like two peas in a pod. And stayed there for a little while. And then Tony became the head coach in Tampa. And he calls me and said, look, we got to go. So I go to Tampa, and I'm the assistant head coach along with secondary coach, and worked with Tony all those years down there and had some great players, man. We had Sapp down there, Brooks. Ronnie Barber was one of my guys, Lynch. And, John and our families are really close. I mean, he is the godfather of our son, Marcus. And we're the godparents of one of his daughters named Leah. And so us and the Lynch family are very, very close. But then from there, you're coaching and you're doing your thing, and then all of a sudden I go crazy and become a head coach. And I got about 5 opportunities to go places, and I go to New York, and they say, well, and then the guy says, we really want you to take this job. And I knew the GM because I worked with him in Kansas City. His name was Terry Bradway. And so I take the jet job, right? And so I'm at the Senior Bowl, and they're going to hire me. So now I got to leave the Senior Bowl to go do, obviously, the press conference. And I'm like, yeah, I got this. And my wife's in Tampa, and she flies up to New York, and I meet her there. And as we're walking in, I'm getting ready to sit down. I'm getting ready to walk in this auditorium. And my wife looks at me. She says, did you write something down? I went, I'm good. I said, I'm good. So I get up on the stage, and I sit up there, and I look in the audience. I go, ooh, this place is packed.
Yep.
And then I looked at my wife. I said, maybe I should have wrote something, huh?
Oh, yeah.
It's too
Welcome
late
to
now.
New York.
Yeah, welcome to New York. And, I get up there, and obviously, I got through it. And that was my first stint, and it's not an easy one. But here again, when you play in Philadelphia, you're good. I mean, you're just good. You get it, right? And we had a good time there, and then I get traded. I go back to Kansas City and go there, and then from there, when I leave there, the ESPN called me and said, hey, can you bring 2 suits up here? And I went, yeah. So I go up there, and they put me on television, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm kind of sitting there on the stage. Trey Wingo's a really good friend of mine, and we're getting ready to do NFL Live, and I've got all these notes, and I'm sitting down there. It's Mark Schlereth, and it's Trey Wingo, and it's myself. And Schlereth had been doing it already, and I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at all these notes, man. I'm like sweating. I'm going, hey, what am I going to say, man? I got all these notes. And so Trey's looking at me, and this thing's counting down, the lights counting 3, 2, and he says, Rhodey. And then I look at him and go, says, hey, listen to this. And I go, look at him. And I'm going to ask you a football question. You give me a football answer. And I look at him. I said, that's all I got to do. He said, that's all you got to do.
Yep.
Well, there you go. That's kind of my, that is my training in television.
That's great. Hey,
We were actually just talking about that because they were asking me when I'm announcing and stuff if they're talking in your ear and stuff. And I said, you just get used to it, man. You just keep going.
You just go. You don't worry about it.
so Coach, you've just shared a whole bunch of stuff that we want to dig into a little bit. And if you don't mind, I'd love to go back to your high school days. And you talked about your dad, asking you about where you're going to college. And it sounds like you were more involved in that decision than he was. And as today's parents are
helicopter.
super
they call it
involved.
helicopter.
Yeah. So tell us about what that was like. What was that dynamic like with your parents growing up relative to sports and as opposed to what we see today?
Here's the sad part. With my parents, my mom worked my mom didn't have any education. She, when she was in high school, she worked in the factories in Germany. She never finished high school. My father joined the Army when he was about 17 years old. He was Tupelo, Mississippi, right? He said he joined the Army. So his whole education was Army. He was a master sergeant. And so when you think about us and how I grew up, there was order, right? There was always order in our household. And you did things, you had chores. Before you could go do things, you had some chores around the house, right? That's part of the deal. And, when it came time to go to college, my dad didn't know, my dad worked where we lived. He had to travel 3-4 hours. So he lived like he kind of lived in a trailer from Monday until Friday when he got off, and he'd come home and he'd get home Friday nights, right? I tell people this all the time. My father never saw me play a football game in high school. He was working. First time he ever saw me play a football game was I was a pro football player.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, with the against the Rams. He came to the Coliseum. And that's another story, but I'll get into that later. But so, it was okay because I didn't, it wasn't like, hey, but that's the world I grew up in. My mom didn't want me to play football because she wasn't going to no games. She was scared to death. She said, no, I don't want to play football. And so I don't think my parents kind of knew I was a pretty good athlete, but they never saw me play. Right? And they weren't around. Where today's parents, ooh, a little different, right? They're at practice. Not only they're at practice. They watch their kids practice and kind of tell you what they can do. They're already telling you as a coach, well, this is what he can do. You need to play him over here. And you're looking at him, I'm going, okay, well, you know what? If you want to coach, my hours, here's my hours. You can actually come in there and help coach if you want to coach. I always say, the parent's job is to be a parent. Our son, I got a son, he's 42 years old. When he was in Tampa, I took him to John one day. Lynch. I said, John, I ain't coaching him. I don't want to coach him. I'm dad. I'm going to go watch him play. I don't want to coach him. If he wants a question, you got to answer it. John said, I got it. I stayed out of it. All I told my kids was this. I got 2 daughters that swim. I got one of them at Texas. She just went to Texas. I got another one that's a senior. I got married late, guys. I got married when I was 46 years old. I got married late. Okay, been married one time. Been there 25 years now. And, I always told my kids this. I'm not going to coach it. You ask me something, I'll give you an answer. But I'm not going to coach. It's not my job to coach. But I said, I'm going to tell you this. When you sign on to do something, you got to finish. You can't quit.
Yep.
You got to finish the deal now. And I don't care how bad it gets, how good it is, but you got to, when you put your name down on there, you need to finish. That's part of the deal. And I said, that's all I want you to do. Just finish. And whatever you're asked to do, you do it. Coaches coach, players play, parents be parents, be fans. And I'm just a fan. I might not agree with the coach. Never talk to a coach about any of my kids. I don't do that. I just leave it alone. Because I think sports is about how you handle pressure, how you handle winning, how you handle defeat. It's life within an hour or 2-hour frame. How you don't want to let your teammates down, that they're depending on you. Whether you play 5 minutes, 10 minutes, doesn't matter how many minutes. The thing I pride myself in as an athlete, I athlete first before coach. Athlete, okay. From high school to college to professional football. I'm going to give you this stat now. This is the only stat I care about. I never missed a practice. I never missed a start. I never missed a game. I was always available. Availability is critical. It's critical. And anything we do, you need to be available, right? Because you know why? I didn't want to let my teammates down. I mean, when I was in Philly and I played corner, half the time I wasn't even in the huddle. I said, I got my guy, man. Don't worry about me. I'm good.
Yep.
I covered my guy. I got my cat. I didn't want to let them guys down. And that's what sports brings, different cultures, right? It just nationalities. It doesn't matter. When you walk into the huddle, you're a team. You need each other. And if we would do that in America, just understand we're Americans. It don't matter. When you get in the huddle, hey, that's all that matters. Just do your job.
Yep.
And don't let your teammates down. That's just my philosophy. That's how I live my life. That's just me.
Coach, funny you say that. I say this a lot, but I played, 12 years baseball, and I never was on the injured list once. And I tell people that's my favorite stat, same thing, because I always said I couldn't go into Bobby Cox's office and be like, I can't play. I would feel like I'm letting my dad down.
Yeah.
Like, I hear you, man.
Yeah, it's funny because people say, well, how do you do that? I say, don't get hurt. Just don't get hurt.
I'm with you.
They look at you. They go, how do you do that, coach? Don't get hurt, man. It's real simple. Don't allow it to happen.
Hey, Coach, you talked about like your journey in college, and you probably have, you transferred in a time where it was frowned upon to transfer. So you probably have a unique perspective on kind of the transfer portal nowadays. And then you became a college coach, probably right as the transfer portal was getting big. So what is your take on the positives and negatives of the transfer portal in college football?
Well, I think the sad part is it probably didn't need to get to this if they just would have raised tuition and scholarship checks, right? But they have, the NCAA, obviously, along with college athletics, have used athletes to basically fund their universities' sports program, right? And that's just the way it was. And it never changed that. They'd give, as the dollar value went up, they'd give you a little bit more money. But when you look at all the money that is generated, especially now on television, and what these athletes can bring to the table, and so it's difficult in this sense. It's an era where we're not used to it. It's free agency, but it's worse than free agency. Because in free agency, when a guy signs a contract for 2 or 3 years, he can't go anywhere. Now, you got to recruit your players every week. Every week you got to recruit them. And look, and some of these kids, their means, how they've grown up, when somebody's offering them the amount of money that some of these kids are getting offered, I mean, I get it. I get that part. Yeah. Look, when I was at Arizona State, before I left, I'm going to tell you who I had there now. I had Jaden Daniels. I had him as a baby. Had Brandon Ayuk, Rashad White, Ricky Pearsall. We score points now. And we played pretty good defense too. I mean, we're pretty good, right?
Oh, I hit some overs on y'all. That's for sure.
And it's kind of funny because you sit there, and I know when I was getting ready to leave, and they all came in there and they're looking at me and said, "You got to go." And they told me what the number was. I said, "You got to go." I didn't get mad at them. I said, "This is the landscape we play in now." And I thought of it this way. I said, if you were an alumni or you were one of those guys, you were a donor. You can't buy an NFL team. You can't buy a baseball team. You can't buy a basketball team, but you could fund college sports. And you could be a GM and your own owner now. That's the scary part for me. That if you get some guy with a big checkbook and he's funding your football team and he says, "Hey, coach, we need to recruit this guy." Or you know what? We need to go after that coach. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's one thing to keep the players, but it's another thing to go, well, wait a minute now.
Yeah.
How do I deal with that? See, that's another thing. That's another thing, behind the closed door. Are you dealing with that? I don't know that. I'm out of it now, but I'm glad I am because it's too hard, guys. And it'll settle in. But here's the sad part. If you're some little small school, let's say San Jose State, good school, good school, and you get an underdeveloped athlete that's kind of small for the position, and you give him a scholarship. And one of these big time schools, big programs, they see him his freshman year and they go, "Oh, that guy's pretty good." You ain't keeping that guy. He's leaving to go to Ohio State or to Michigan. They're going to offer some money. So you develop him for 1 year, but you can't keep him. Right? Because he's going to go somewhere else. Because of the shining light and maybe the money they give you. I don't know. But that's what you're dealing with. Now, with that as a coach, you got to be very nimble because you're going to collect players and lose players. And how does that work? And how do you build a team? Right? Because players are leaving and you're requiring players all the time. That's difficult too.
Have you noticed the scores the last couple of weeks? Like the FCS schools are just getting absolutely just obliterated.
Yeah.
Because it goes down. The FCS schools are worse off than the lower
100%.
Power 5 schools, and so they're getting. Instead, in the old days, an FCS school may have a shot because they have an older team, of juniors
Right.
and seniors and may have a great day and beat a bigger school. They're losing all those guys. They don't have an older team anymore. They're getting beat 70 to nothing.
Well, and even the school, think about like App State. We saw App State always try to shock people, and then they played Clemson. It was a completely different App State team.
They don't have the athletes
exactly.
anymore.
And I don't know this to be true, but I've heard this. To get a quarterback out of high school, 1.5.
Oh, I've
And I'm happy for the kid. I'm like, really? I said,
yeah.
I was, I'm 50 years too early, man.
Coach, I want to go back a little bit because I love what you said when you said parents parent and let the coaches coach. So you talked about that coach in high school, and really he was, your guy and taught you. Why was he such a good coach, and what did he do for you?
Reminded me a lot of my father. He was very disciplined. We had a disciplined program. Guys, I wanted to play wide receiver, but we didn't throw the ball at all. So I kind of played tight end, didn't catch. So I played safety too. I got more interceptions than catches, because we didn't throw it. But he had this program, and that everything was just built on this is how we do it. It was almost an assembly line. And he had this winning tradition. I mean, this coach won a long time, guys. Great man, great football coach. And reminded me a lot of my father, and, understanding the details matter, the little things, right? I remember 87 man was a run playoff tackle. The tight end had to block down on the three technique, and the fullback came through there and kicked out the backer, and we ran that play. We just practiced all day, and it was 87, 89. Man, I was like, why do we keep doing this? It was over and over, and it's like, man. But I tell you what, now, as you get older, you start figuring out. You just said it's the little things, man. That's what wins. More games are lost than won. They really are in football. More games are lost than won. And if you just play solid, just don't beat yourself with penalties and turnovers. I always tell those guys, quarterbacks, I say, man, whatever you do, don't throw it to the bad guys. Just don't throw it to the bad guys. We're going to kick it. I've told every team I've ever coached, we kick the ball to the opponent. Either you punt it, you kick a field goal, or you kick the point after. There's 3 kicks involved, guys.
Yeah.
Right? And you kick off after you score. You kick it. As long as we kick the ball on offense, we're doing good.
So, Coach, who do you consider the best player you ever played against?
Oh boy, the best player I ever played against. Who would that be? That's a hard one. That's a really hard one. Because I came in the league in 1977. And I played from 77 to 86. Probably, and he played on the defensive side of it. And I don't want to slight anybody, but in the era that he came in, Lawrence Taylor. He wrecked the game, guys.
Yes,
I mean, he
he wrecked a lot of people.
he wrecked the game. I can remember when he first went to the Giants and I was with the Eagles. And on defense, I stood up to watch this guy. I didn't sit on the bench. I got to watch this dude. And he was just, whoa. I mean, he could wreck the game. I mean, he couldn't block him. I mean, like, man, we can't block that guy? No, I can't block him. And, he was that kind of guy.
Coach, my dad coached quarterbacks at the University of Virginia back when Lawrence Taylor was at UNC. And the warm-ups, he tells this story, the quarterbacks were so nervous in warm-ups before the game, and they were just doing like fly routes on air. They didn't complete one pass in warm-ups because they were so scared of facing Lawrence Taylor. They were done. They were beat before the game ever started, knowing that he was going to be on the outside.
I can remember in Philly, he came out of Philly his first year, and it was third and long, and he's lined up on the right side, and we're standing over there watching him, and he hollers out, "Jaws, I'm I'm coming to get you. Before the ball was like that, went, man, this is crazy. Sure enough, we turned to protection. We did everything. It didn't matter.
You know, Coach, we've had Tony Dungy on this show, and I know y'all are very close. And
yes, we are.
You know, one thing that was great about him was when he came on our show. Remember, they had a birthday party that day, and his wife was getting the house cleaned, so he was in the car with no air conditioning on. With us for 50 minutes. And I remember thinking, turn the car on, do something. But
he's the best.
Yeah, explain kind of y'all's relationship and just what you've learned from him.
Well, look, this is how it started. Back then, you used to play in the college all-star games. And we were over in Japan. We had just left the East-West game, and we're over in Japan, and we're on this bus. And I'm going to play in the Japan Bowl with these guys. And so he's sitting across from me. And I introduced myself, Herm Edwards. He says, Tony Dungy. So I'm looking at him. I go, hey, see, you running back? And he goes, no. And then I go, wide receiver? And he goes, no. And I said, what position you play? He said, quarterback. And I went, what? I said, man, you don't play no quarterback. He said, no, I play quarterback. I said, where? He goes, University of Minnesota. I said, man, Minnesota ain't got no black quarterback. What you talking about? You don't play quarterback. And he goes, no, man, I play quarterback. I went, so we kind of talking, And we became friends that day. And lo and behold, he's on the other team in this all-star game. And he tells the story. It's great. He's moving the ball at the end of the game, and he's about to be the MVP. He's going to be the MVP of this deal. And so he throws a pass in the red zone. It gets tipped. I intercept it. They don't score. We win. So from that day forward, we just kind of clicked and became friends. He goes to the Steelers. I play for the Eagles. He plays for about 3 or 4 years. He starts coaching. Now he's on the Steelers staff. And I'm with the Eagles. So we play the Steelers every year, either in preseason or we play them in the regular season. So we would always talk, And then when I was at San Jose State, I did an internship. And Tony was on that staff with Marty. So I go there during the summer and do an internship. And me and Tony are talking. And he says, hey, man, when I become a head coach, you're coming with me. And I go, I'm good. I said, wherever you go, coach. I said, Tony, I'm coming. And he says, okay. So I'm at the Pro Bowl. We're doing the Pro Bowl. We're scouting the Pro Bowl or something like that. And he gets the job in Tampa. And I'm in Hawaii. And so I call him up. And, the phone, he had left a message to call. I call him. He says, okay, you got to get down here. So as soon as I leave, I go. So I go. So I go to Tampa. The first couple of years wasn't very good, guys. And I was in Kansas City with Marty, and we're in the playoffs every year. The one year we get knocked out. We think we're going to the Super Bowl. We get Joe Montana and Marcus Allen, and we're going to go. I mean, we got the best team in the AFC. We're good. And we go up to Buffalo, and Bruce Smith comes around the left end, and he knocks Joe out in the cold. And I said, we're in trouble now, boys. Yeah. We end up losing that game, and Buffalo goes, whatever. So now I'm down there with Tony, and first game of the season, we're not very good, guys. First game of the season, we're standing there. We're playing the Green Bay Packers, Brett Favre. And I'm standing, and I got Lynch, and I got the DBs, and we're standing there. And Brett Favre, he is lighting us up, guys. I mean, by the third quarter, he's already thrown 4 touchdowns. And I'm standing there, and it's in Tampa, and I kind of fold my hands. I like this, and I'm looking at the field, and I'm talking to myself. I go, why did I come here? I said, I was in Kansas City. I had Dale Carter, Albert Lewis playing corner. I had this great secondary. And I said, I'm down here. And Brett Favre is lighting us up, man.
First game.
So I walk up to Tony. And Tony looks at me. He said, you all right? I said, TD. I said, this is really hard. He looked at me. He said, Herm, it's going to be okay. I mean, and I looked at him and I said, okay. And I walked away and I went, you know what? This dude, he thinks we're going to be okay. And I got it. Well, you know the story. We were okay. It took a year or so. And then all of a sudden, we became kind of okay. And I credit a lot of my coaching acumen with Tony. Just, the players used to tease us all the time because they found out after about the first week, Lynch and them came up to me and said, well, yeah, we figured this thing out. I said, what'd you figure out? He said, well, Tony's the good cop. He said, you the bad cop. I said, yeah, that's about right. I'm the bad cop. So, I kind of learned it from there, and we've been friends ever since. You can imagine we came out together in 1977. We met on a bus for an All-Star game and just kind of clicked and been friends. And I owe my career to him as a coach because he taught me how to, when I was in Tampa, he was teaching me how to be a head coach. I wasn't just a secondary coach. He was teaching, and the players knew it. And Lynch and them, they'll tell you to say, man, we knew when Herm was here, after about 2 or 3 years, he's going to be gone. He's going to be a head coach somewhere. And, his tree is, Lovie Smith, Rod Marinelli, Mike Tomlin took my spot when I left. So Tony has put a lot of guys in position to be head coaches, right? And that's a credit to him.
So, Coach, Tony, I can't think, there can't be anybody who doesn't think Tony is a great man. He talked to us about leadership and character and all those types of things. And as you look, from your vantage point as a head coach, what are the differentiators that make great coaches?
Well, obviously, I think, maximizing the talent you have, being a man of that. When you think about it, it really is about the players. And then for me, it's how you communicate, right? I've always said this, not only in coaching, but in life. We grow up in this world where people respect your title, right? You grow up and certain things, I got to respect, okay. But you got to earn their trust. You got to earn their trust. You got to earn their trust. And it really was evident for me when I became the head coach of the Jets. First game of the season, we're playing the Colts. Peyton Manning, the good Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
When he was really good.
Yeah, you got the good one.
We got the good one. And played against his daddy, Archie. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah.
When he was with the Saints. And we lost. And so we go home, and then Tuesday I'm sitting in the office. We got to go play the Raiders next week. So we're 0-1. And I'm watching this television and I'm going, man, what is that? Plane runs into the building. So I turn the volume up. I go, what is this? It's 9/11. And so I run down the hall. I call the coach. I say, guys, you watching this? They go, no, coach. I said, look at this. So call the commissioner. Later on that day, say, obviously, we're not playing this week. He says, well, the owners are going to get together. We're going to decide Thursday. I said, what? I said, you can't play a football game. He said, Herm, we're going to be okay. We're going to decide Thursday. And I went, oh, okay. Well, I'm like, well, wait a minute now. So in my mind, I'm going, man, there's no way you can play a football game. So Wednesday, players come in. And I'm standing up in the room. I go, hey, guys, I said, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not. I can't coach a football game this week. And I said, I don't know how you guys can play. I said, but we're going to go to practice. So we go out to practice. 20 minutes within that practice, I call them up and say, come on, let's go back in. So we go back in the meeting room. And I tell them, I said, look, if you guys don't want to play and the league plays, we're good. We ain't getting on the plane, boys. I promise you, you ain't getting on that airplane. I come back, they voted. Coach, we can't do this. Good, go home. Go home. Go kiss your babies, call your loved ones, do whatever you got to do, man. We're good. I call the commissioner. I said, Mr. Commissioner, I don't know what the league's going to do. I said, you need to know what the Jets are doing. And you need to advise the Raiders that if you guys decide to play, the Jets aren't getting on an airplane. We're not going to play. We'll forfeit the game. He said, Herm, I said, I'm just telling you. You just need to advise me. We're not going to play. So now I got to call the owner. I'm 0-1. I'm 0-1. I'm going, here we go. So I called him up, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, I said, you need to know that we're not going to play this weekend. He says, the league made the decision already. I went, no. I said, the Jets made a decision. And he said, what do you mean? He said, then he asked the question, can we do that? He said, how do we do that? I said, yeah, just don't get on the plane. And then he says, well, what does that mean? We're 0-2. We're 0-2, right? And obviously the league canceled. And we ended up getting the playoffs. We had to go make the game up. Last game of the season, we're 9-6. And if we win the game in Oakland, we're going to the playoffs. We got to kick a 53-yarder to win it. I didn't even look. I said, I know we're going to make this. And we made it, right? That event, and I'm saddened that it took that. But, you know, there's moments when you're coaching that something's going to happen where the players, they're going to need some direction. And I wasn't the head coach anymore when I made my decision. I was an American. And I said, there's no way that we need to be playing a football game. We can't do this. This is not right. And my greatest accomplishment as a coach, we took that football team. We went down to the site on buses, and we loaded up supplies for the first responders and shook their hands. That was my greatest victory ever as a coach, guys. I say it all the time. That was my greatest victory, man. We went down there on them buses, and them guys looked at us and said, man, I said, man, you guys are the heroes, man. I just wanted to do something. I think all of us as Americans, when that event happened, we were compelled to go, what can I do? I need to do something, right? And that was our way of giving back. We said, man, look, we're going to do everything we can to tell these guys, thank you for what you're doing right now.
Well, what made that story even more impressive is that you were a rookie coach who hadn't won a game yet. You know, I mean, to make that decision as someone who hadn't won his first NFL game in his first season as a head coach, that says a lot about you.
Well, you know the thing about it? And when I called my wife and told my wife, I said, hey, we're not going. And she says, the league decided? I said, nah, we ain't going. She says, good for you. That at the end of the day, guys, it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard. Because you know what? I didn't care about no job. I go get another job, man. Yeah, get another job. Whether I'm a head coach or not, I get a job. Football, I'll do something. But it's like, there's no way we can do this. We can't play football. Football's not even important right now. That's the last thing anybody wants to do, watch football game. Right?
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, I love that because, I mean, 9/11 was huge, but every week things happen and life is more important than sports.
Yep.
As much as we love sports, but life is more important than sports. And that's sometimes the families, you know, involved in youth sports, we as parents, as coaches, and then we relay that to our kids that sports is the most important thing, and it's just not. So love that.
And life is in the toy department.
Yeah.
Yep. You're right.
I mean, you know, and I love that our country is passionate about sports.
Yep.
And I think whether you're a great athlete or non-athlete, the thing I like the most about sports is this. Regardless of what sport you play, it doesn't matter. It crosses all bridges and it makes people come together. Whether you're on a team, but also the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
People walk in that stadium from all different backgrounds, different beliefs. But when they walk in the stadium, and if that's their team, if the Atlanta Falcons are their team, guess what? For 3 hours, they could care less what you look like, what you do. We're Atlanta Falcon fans. And we're cheering for the Falcons, man.
You're so right.
Ain't life a kick, man? I tell people all the time, you know, when we're having problems, I always say this, just go get in the huddle. Go get in the huddle and figure it out.
I love that. Well, Coach, we appreciate you spending time, but before we let you go, we got to ask one more questions. I know there's a lot of Hermisms, right? And we've heard them all, but I know the title of your book is You Play to Win the Game, and which I love. So you got to tell our listeners, because I know they're dying for it. Give us a story behind it.
Here's the story. We're 2-5 our second year. First year we get in the playoffs. We're 2-5. And I'm in New York, press conference, and we're struggling. We got a good team, but we're struggling. Not playing good, not coaching good, just losing games we shouldn't lose, right? And so I'm in the press conference, and Judy Battista, very good writer. She works for NFL Network now, I think. She's sitting in the back, and she's about to ask the magical question. Is the team going to quit? And before she could say that, I say what I said. I've only said it one time. That day, I've never said it again. People ask me to say it, so no, I don't need to say it. I said it one time. It takes care of itself, right? And so I always tell people too, when they try to tell me when they want to say it, they go, okay, no, I go, no. Remember the jingle, hello. That sets it all up as the hello. And so I say what I say. It's on a Tuesday. No players are in the building. And then you go back to work. You don't watch television. You're going back to work. We got to play the right. We got to go play. We're playing at home, but I forget who we're playing. And we got to try to win a game. And so I get home probably around, 1 o'clock. My wife, lights come on. She goes, oh, my. I go, what are you talking about? I'm tired. I want to go to bed. I got to get up in about 4 hours because I'm one of them crazy guys that works out at 4:30 in the morning, So I'm like, I got to go back. I'm still at work. I said, what are you talking about? She said, people have been calling. It's all over the place. I said, what are you talking about? I did that like at 10 o'clock in the morning. I done forgot what I said, right? And she said, and then she tells me, I said, that. And then I looked at her, I said, was it good? She said, it was good. I said, okay. So we kind of laughed, I go to bed. So the next day, I come in and I'm going to address the team. So I stand up and I get up and I got my notes about what we're going to do in practice. And Chad Pennington stands up. He said, Coach, I got something. I said, what? And I call my players by their numbers. I said, what you got, 10? He said, Coach, we heard what you said. And I looked at him, I said, and the whole team's in there. They got quiet. I mean, they were really quiet. And I said, are we good? And he said, Coach, we're good. And I looked at the team. I said, guys, are we good? He said, Coach, we're good. We got it. We won the division. We won the division. We ended up winning the division. And there's always moments. You got to capture the moments. And it wasn't planned. That was not orchestrated. People say, well, do you know you was going to say that? I had no idea. I was protecting sports. You can't quit. That ain't part of the deal. I don't care if you won 10 games or you lost 10 in a row. You cannot quit. You signed on. You got to finish the deal. You just got to finish. You can't quit. And so the reason I said that was because of that. It's like, no, you don't. Yep. You don't get to do that, right? When it gets bad, I want to start over. No. It's like these kids playing the computer game. They're losing. I get to reset. No, there ain't no reset. You got to play this game now. You don't get to restart it. So you kidding me? There's no reset. You got to play it out.
Well, I know this, Coach. It was obviously a great quote, and everybody's got it. But I'll tell you this, man. Thank you for being who you are. It's refreshing in a world today where a lot of people don't speak the truth or say what they want to say. And what you've said, I know our listeners are going to get a lot. And again, I love what you said when you were a parent, man, because there are helicopter parents. Parents parent and let the coaches coach, man. And
that's exactly right. You know what? And just love your children, man. They grow up fast.
Yeah,
they grow up fast, man. I mean, my daughter's a freshman now at the University of Texas. And it's like, I can remember it was just a while ago. She was born in New York. And it was like, now she's in Texas, man. It goes by fast, right? And it's just be a parent, man. That's what kids want. They just want you to be mom and dad. Just hug them and encourage them and just be there for them. Don't let the coaches coach. You don't have, just be the parent. Just be the best parent you can be. It's hard enough being a parent.
Yeah. That's true.
Great advice. Great advice.
Hey, man. Well, hey, we appreciate it. And hopefully we get a chance to circle back with you down the road, man. But thank you for everything that you mean to the football, but also, like you said, it's a bigger picture. And I think that's kind of what our whole thing that we try to promote here on Pure Athlete is that we love sports, but it doesn't trump the bigger picture.
Correct, and I'm glad you guys are doing this, man, because there's a lot of voices, obviously, that you guys bring on that people need to hear. You know, they just think athletes and coaches are single focused on just one thing, and it's really not.
No, you're
it's
right.
bigger than that. That's just kind of what we do. You know, that's our occupation. That's not who we are.
Love it.
Well, thanks for being an important voice for us today and for our audience. We really appreciate it.